A near future embedded in technology. As far back as the 1800s, Samuel Butler, Charles Darwin's contemporary, argued that humans were already becoming inseparable from machines and that they were extracorporeous limbs, extensions of the human being, like an arm or leg. In his opinion, he believed that machines would one day acquire consciousness, autonomy, and even free will, and build a future wherein man lives in a prototype of mechanical life. Technology has become a major aspect in our lives, especially during the past years in which COVID-19 has obliged us to heavily depend on it. From labor being shifted to online platforms, the demand in unmanned delivery drones, to love where people who were isolated by the pandemic found solace in virtual companions, there has been a record spike in the trend where people have moved on to technologically reliant variations of everyday activities. Considering its exponential growth, it would be ignorant not to think about the future and its possible outcomes. Through this simulation, we intend to fast forward society into what we envision as a possible future for humanity. We hope for the audience to take away an informed opinion on what a progressive reliance on technology through successive generations could bring about. This could be viewed as positive or negative. It would also be a personal reflection as to where the user's choices are and where they stand on the matter through this extended metaphor of the end or renewal of humanity. Our project differentiated from existing ones since we are introducing this, a philosophical dilemma between man and machine, in a more balanced light, showing the benefits and negatives of each side, so as to not lean on any bias. The premise is to create an ethical dilemma by placing the user as the main protagonist, allowing them to choose between two conflicting outcomes regarding the fate of a human child. Through this experience, we plan to discuss the ever-growing reliance on technology and its potential scene exploration, transformative experiences, and a dilemma for users to make a decision, leaving the experience of wondering about the choices and the consequences. The process started by talking about the future and how technologically enhanced humans would look like at the time. We used Figma to add pictures that seemed relevant to our imagination of humans and cyborgs. Then we discussed the story and how we imagined the cyborg and narrative progression for the project would look like. Simultaneously, we worked on the narrative in a shared Word document. To test our narrative, we decided to make a video and test it with users to understand the effectiveness of the story. For this purpose, we found images that we believed could relate to the story and organized them across multiple canvases that were later used in the video production. After this stage, the video was created using a voiceover and images as a medium to convey the narrative. The video went through a couple of iterations and we tested with multiple users until we achieved the desired effect from the narrative. The developmental process included 4 sprints, which started with the ideation and how we would implement them on paper, and eventually on a blackboard. We tested the cinematic video with new changes with 27 users and we were satisfied with the results. This allowed us to freely move on to the final stage of the project, developing the VR experience in Unity. In an article from Stepanov, Quesnel, and Rike, the immersive powers of VR present a unique opportunity to reproduce such experiences in the lab or at home, making them accessible to both the public and to researchers. Thus, we sought to relay our experience through using VR to convey the feelings of being a cyborg versus a human through the narrative and cinematic approach. As suggested by the authors previously mentioned, VR can be used in a lab or home setting to provide an opportunity for people to gain experiences that are not otherwise achievable in real life, and these experiences can be used as transformative as they transition between 3 states: perceptual experience, cognitive shift, and finally behavioral change. It would further allow our participant to easily embody a character and experience a presumed future while challenging their moral sense and reliance on humanity's succeedance. For the VR experience, we discussed our ideas and finalized the scenes and assets that we were planning to implement. Then we started to develop the project in Unity and experimented with different setups until we achieved the closest to our ideal state. Imaginative and narrative immersions are the key to our experience. The best way to demonstrate our story and its value will be through narrative and storytelling, while imaginative immersion enables users to feel like they're being a part of the narrative world. And so, our VR experience would entail this: There will be a maximum of one user at a time, and we aim to immerse the user in the story as an isolated cyborg who has a heroic role. The scene and concepts are appropriate for individuals over 16 years of age. The physical setup is a dark room, and we will have 3 members, one dressing up as a nurse, the second as a cyborg, and the third as a technologically enhanced human. The user is then greeted by a nurse with a wheelchair. They are then escorted to the dark room on the wheelchair for the experiment. Based on the user's choice, one of the team members, the cyborg or part human, greets them and invites them to take on an interview. Then, the team member will ask questions about the user's choice and what the feedback about the experience was. The user sees the VR experience through first-person view, and the XR locomotion system is set for continuous movement. For each scene, there is a story that the user can hear through noise-cancelling headsets that they wear upon entry, and the user can explore each scene freely during the time allotted.
I remember I was in a room, a gray room, and I saw this projection on the entire wall across from me. Yeah, that was an interesting way to go about it, since the VR experience, I guess, can only be so long because we only have one semester to really dig into it. That was a good way maybe to do that.
Most interesting thing is actually at the end, where there's gonna be a character in the real world inviting you and keep playing out the experience even after you took off the headset. To me, that's the most interesting part.
In the end, I chose human because I felt like, yeah, this child should choose for themselves when they're older, and if I make that choice now, then they can't do that.
As we intended and hoped for, our narrative was described to be powerful by the users. A particular area that the users especially enjoyed was the beginning, wherein the video inducting them into the story was placed, and the final choice. The cityscapes as well were described to be thematically fitting for the purpose of the narrative. However, as with anything, the opportunities for improvement remain unending. As our simulation was presented in the format of a VR story-based experience and not an interactive simulation, there was a heavier reliance on the success of narrative elements. Specific areas were revealed to us. These included the lack of interaction, but the need to hold VR controllers. This gave users a false sense of expectation that there would be elements within the narrative to interact with more than just movement. In order to correct this, moving forward, we would seek to implement a gaze-based navigation system. A second area that was brought to our attention was that the ending scene in which the user was to make a decision would take too long to play out, leading to a loss in the momentum of the narrative. In order to rectify this, we would seek to add a bit more life to the scene, so it isn't as dreary a walk, or simply shorten the platform so that users may reach the endpoint faster. Finally, the third area was the issue of the child, who was a central point of the narrative. Though this was not explicitly brought up by the users themselves, the child whom the users had sought to make the decision for was never featured physically within the simulation. This led to users described as a lack of emotional connection. From our side, what we had intended was for there to have never been a child, and the users were making the decision on whether to remain a robot or become a human, with us factoring a child as an imaginary plot device and a twist in the story. The misconception, it seems, was not well communicated as part of the narrative, and so was lost on the users. This we seek to resolve by integrating this as a part of the narrative more explicitly within the VR simulation, and rather than as a passing comment in the post-VR experience. From these experiences, we have learned where we are to aim for in the future, and with this, your simulation has been concluded. We thank you for the results you have provided us, human.